What's going on, Headliner Nation? Kyle back with the Fantasy Headliners, and high five to all of you out there because we've made it through the offseason. The must-haves, the must-avoids, under the radar, sleeper, mock draft, strategies, everything is done. And it's now time to get into our regular season content. We are officially in week 1 of the NFL season, and we kick off every Monday right here with waiver wire pickups. That's what we're going to be talking about today. Maybe some of you haven't even drafted yet, and if you haven't drafted, then this is some good information for you. Some of you have already drafted, and waiver wire pickups don't open up until the first week. Whatever it may be, there's a few guys with ownership percentages that are a little bit low right now, and to qualify for this show, you cannot be more than 50% owned. So all these guys that we're going to talk about today are under 50% owned. One thing I just want to keep everybody in mind of, it's about ready to get crazy, ladies and gentlemen. We try to answer as many questions as possible. Jake and I are in and out of the comments. We have guys on our staff specifically here to help answer questions. But even with that being said, we cannot get to every single one of them. So if you have pressing questions and you need answers from us, the one way that you can guarantee that we're going to see it and respond is to go support us on Patreon. It's only $10 a month to get guaranteed answers to all of your questions through Patreon. And there's a link down below in the description of this video. So just keep that in mind. If you're going to want some help from the Fantasy Headliners and you're worried we may not see your questions, you can go over to Patreon and subscribe, and then we'll see everything that you have for us. Let's go ahead and move on though and talk about some waiver wire pickups that you'll want to keep in mind as we head into the first week of the season. All right, my first quarterback to bring up, Gardner Minsch of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, he is only 20% owned in leagues as of this moment. And last week, after they got rid of his main running back, Leonard Fournette, you have to expect that they're going to throw the ball quite a bit this season. Now, I like Gardner Minsch, especially if you're like a 2 QB or a super flex type league. This week, he goes up against Indianapolis, and they're probably going to have to throw the ball quite a bit against Indianapolis if that offense for them is humming. So just keep that in mind with Gardner Minsch this week. It's a nice matchup at home against Indianapolis, and they're probably going to have to throw the ball quite a bit. That defense is not going to be very good. James Robinson at running back, he's expected to get some time there. We'll see what happens with the running back situation because Devonta Freeman has been said to have been in town and visiting, but as of the recording of this video, nothing has happened as of yet. So with the backfield a little bit in flux, maybe back and forth with some guys, we know Chris Thompson will probably be on the field, but if this team is behind, they're going to be throwing it quite a bit. Gardner Minsch is probably going to have a decent week here in week 1. My other quarterback on the waiver wire watch this week is Ryan Tannehill. That's right, a guy that really we've talked about quite a bit this season. I liked him a lot to begin the offseason, and then as we progress, I found some troubling things. But this week, he goes up against Denver, and the one thing about Denver is they've got Bradley Chubb and Von Miller back, so Ryan Tannehill might get knocked around a little bit. He might be pressured a little bit, but the defensive backs could get burnt at times. This is a Denver Broncos defense that might give up some big plays through the air. And with A.J. Brown, a guy that averaged over 8 yards after the catch per reception last year, there's going to be some big playability, and there's going to be some opportunities for Ryan Tannehill to burn this defense down the field. Now, it's going to be at Denver, so the altitude and everything is always a little bit of a factor. Derrick Henry is going to run the ball quite a bit. But this might be a little bit of a back and forth game. Ryan Tannehill could be a guy this week. Again, QB2 or 2 QB super flex type league. If you need to pick him up or if you haven't drafted yet, he's a guy that maybe you keep on your radar if you're in a deeper league. But just one guy to watch on the waiver wire this week. My first running back to keep an eye on, Chris Thompson. Now, I've already talked about his quarterback, Gardner Minsch, and we know that Leonard Fournette is out the door now. Chris Thompson is going to be a guy that's going to be on the field quite a bit. We've been talking about Chris Thompson for weeks now because we thought that this was a good fit for him if he can stay healthy. Well, he's healthy right now, so there's no better opportunity to use him than at the moment. He's only 24.6% owned, going up against Indianapolis this week. If they find themselves down late in the game, Chris Thompson is a guy that's probably going to be on the field quite a bit. Keep in mind, I already mentioned it with Gardner Minsch. That backfield could be a little bit in flux this week, whether it be a guy like Devonta Freeman, if they do end up signing him before they play a game, or if it's two of the other guys, younger guys that may be back and forth on and off the field quite a bit. Chris Thompson is the veteran that's been in this offense before. Jay Gruden, he's worked with him before when he was in Washington, so he already knows what's going on. So expect him to be out there leading the way and on the field quite a bit. In PPR leagues, definitely a flex type option. My number 2 option on the waiver wire for running backs this week, Jerick McKinnon of San Francisco. They're going up against Arizona, and he's only 9.4% owned. We've seen some video of him in training camp, and he's looking healthy once again. The San Francisco 49ers, they're dealing with a lot of injuries at the wide receiver position right now. Really, all you've got out there is Jerick McKinnon, and everyone else is, we'll see. Deebo Samuel, there has been some talk that he may be on the field for week 1. I don't know if that happens, and even if it does, is he really going to be 100%? Jerick McKinnon is a guy that could see a lot of time on the field in pass-catching roles. Maybe they use him out in the slot a little bit. Maybe they run some two running back type formations and get him in the backfield with a Raheem Mostert. Who knows? We'll see what happens with Jerick McKinnon. Even Tevin Coleman could get out there a little bit as well. But if they need pass catchers, McKinnon could be that guy that really helps them out. And they're going up against Arizona, a really good offense as well. This could be a back and forth matchup that requires Jimmy G to throw the ball around a little bit. And that Arizona defense, to me, really hasn't improved enough that I'm not willing to fade any offenses against them. Jerick McKinnon, keep an eye on him. He could become a nice PPR option over the next several weeks. My last option here, Daryl Williams from Kansas City. They're going up against Houston. He's only 5.6% owned, and we heard last week that there's going to be a probability that him and Clyde Edwards-Helaire split a lot of the touches in week 1. Now, we know what the depth chart's going to look like. It's CEH, it's Williams, and then it's Darwin Thompson. Daryl Williams is going to get on the field quite a bit. Don't be surprised if we see him in the red zone, at the goal line. If we don't see him on the field spelling CEH on first and second down at times. Because it is week 1, there's been no preseason. It's a Thursday night game. Don't be surprised if he's on and off the field quite a bit with CEH. Something to monitor what happens. If you are a CEH owner, it might be a good idea to grab Williams and just stash him in case you need to have him at some point this season. My first wide receiver to take a look at on the waiver wire this week is Anthony Miller. They're going to be going up against Detroit, and Detroit is a team that he could potentially beat quite often. They've got 2 new cornerbacks. We're not really sure what exactly is going to happen in the slot for them, and that's probably where Anthony Miller is going to spend a lot of his time. I would assume that this is probably going to be a little bit of a high-scoring game. The Detroit Lions, the offense is looking good. Matthew Stafford is healthy. The offensive line should be a little bit improved. They have the passing weapons. They have the running game. This is going to be a back-and-forth matchup. And for Anthony Miller, only 38% owned right now. Definitely a guy that could see some nice volume this week. Mitchell Trubisky, we already know, is going to be the starter. So it's a little bit of a familiar path that we saw at the end of last year when Anthony Miller turned it up a notch. His head coach, Matt Nagy, just a week ago said he may have had the best camp of any player in Bears camp this year. So keep an eye on Anthony Miller this week. Definitely a guy that could have that breakout performance we've been waiting for. My number 2 wide receiver to own, Preston Williams from Miami at New England, 32.7% owned. Going up against New England, a terrible defense this year. This is also a game which maybe last year you wouldn't have thought this, but it could be a little bit back and forth. Miami, they've improved that defense quite a bit, and that offense should be good enough that they'll be able to go back and forth with New England and keep up with them even on enemy territory. So, for Preston Williams, he's looking healthy and ready to go. He is a guy that last year to begin the season was outperforming Devontae Parker. Devontae Parker didn't really take over that wide receiver 1 role until after Preston Williams ran out. Now, is Preston Williams going to be the wide receiver 1? Probably not. It's still Devontae Parker. but he's going to be the number 2 option in that offense. Keep an eye on him this week. Definitely could be a guy going up against a battered and broken down New England defense that could really ball out this week. My number 3 wide receiver is going to be Desean Jackson, Philadelphia. They are at Washington, 27% owned. This is a perfect time to get Deshaun Watson. He could have a huge week this week. Maybe he's not a long-term option for you, but we know they're dealing with some injuries there at wide receiver. Deshaun Jackson still has some of that flash left, it looks like. All he needs is maybe one big play to return value each week. Even though he's not a guy that I think that we should be playing every single week this season, if you're looking for somebody that you need to get in there because you've had an injury, maybe you just didn't draft that well at the wide receiver position, you could grab him and have a decent week for him going up against probably a Washington defense that's not going to be that great this season in terms of shutting down the passing game. My last wide receiver to keep in mind for this week, Allen Lazard of Green Bay. They're at Minnesota, 6.4% owned. That Minnesota defense, they're going to be tough, and they're probably going to be really tough against the run. So, what are they going to do this week? That we know that Green Bay wants to run the ball a lot more, but what if that run game just isn't working against Minnesota this week? Green Bay is going to have to throw the ball to stay in the game, and this is where Allen Lazard can really show up and show us if he is really ready to take that step forward as the next number 2 in Green Bay. I've talked about him a couple of times this offseason. We know that the number 2 in Green Bay in the past has been productive. Unfortunately, over the last couple of seasons, Aaron Rodgers really hasn't had a reliable number 2. Maybe that becomes Allen Lazard, and a matchup that forces Green Bay to throw it a little bit more often. Allen Lazard could see a decent game this week against Minnesota. Moving on to tight ends, we already talked about his quarterback, Ryan Tannehill. Well, how in the world Jonnu Smith is still under 50% owned is beyond me. If you have been a subscriber to Headliner Nation, I guarantee that you have Jonnu Smith on at least a couple of your teams already. But there's a lot of people out there that do not. If you didn't draft well at the tight end position, or if you have a deep bench and you can keep another tight end, I'm picking him up this week against Denver. So for some of the same reasons that I already mentioned about getting Ryan Tannehill this week. Now, this is a Denver team that could give up some big plays. But is Corey Davis really ready to be that guy? Jonnu Smith has a real expectation of being the number 2 target on this team this season. If A.J. Brown is seeing some double teams or being shadowed by a safety, Jonnu Smith could find himself in some territory where he is able to win. Now, keep an eye as well. He's probably going to get a slot cornerback quite a bit. The outside linebackers for this team, Von Miller and Bradley Chubb, are guys that aren't, going to drop back into pass protection. They're going to be rushing quite a bit. So Jonnu Smith might not see an athletic type linebacker on him to guard him. Expect him to see some targets, receptions, yards, and maybe even a touchdown in week 1. And my second tight end to own and look for on the waiver wire is Jack Doyle. The dude is only 25% owned, going up against Jacksonville. And outside of T.Y. Hilton, the wide receivers for Indianapolis have been on and off the field all off season long. Not really anybody reliable that I'm looking at right now outside of T.Y. Hilton. They're going to be using the run game quite a bit. There's no Trey Burton. Jack Doyle is the guy that's going to be looked at a lot. And we know with Phillip Rivers, he used to target his tight ends quite a bit. When Hunter Henry was healthy, he used to look his way. We know that Antonio Gates and Phillip Rivers used to have quite the connection. Now, Antonio Gates and Jack Doyle are not the same person, and I'm not trying to compare Jack Doyle to a future Hall of Famer, even though he's got a Hall of Fame nickname. But that being said, Phillip Rivers in his first game of the year in a new offense could be looking for something that's comfortable to him. And if going to the tight end is comfortable, week 1 for Jack Doyle could end up being a success. There you have it, Headliner Nation. The first waiver wire show is out of the way. If you're new here to the Fantasy Headliners and you have not yet hit that subscribe button, I highly encourage you to do it now. By this time, if you're watching this video Monday morning, Monday afternoon, Monday night, whatever it may be, we may have already crossed over 90,000 subscribers. So we thank you very much for subscribing to the Fantasy Headliners. But that next goal is within reach as well, 100,000 subscribers. So help us on our journey to 100K and hit that subscribe button. leave a comment down below. Like I said, we'll get to as many as we possibly can. If we can't get to it, don't forget, you can subscribe on Patreon, $10 a month, guaranteed answers to all of your questions. And as always, leave a comment down below as well with who are you looking for? You know, what is it that you need on your team right now? Do you need to pick somebody up? Is it one of these guys? Are you looking at somebody else that you're wondering about? Leave a comment down below and hit that like button as well. Headliner Nation, thanks so much for tuning in to the first episode of the 2020 regular season from the Fantasy Headliners. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you on the next one.